The purpose of today's conversation is to discuss interpersonal relationships and how to maintain a variety of relationships effectively. One is fully capable of managing healthy relationships at work, home, with friends, with the community where one lives. It is totally possible to maintain good relations with in every single area of life. Today's guest, he is a relationship coach. He's a healer. His passion for solving one of the world's most complex problems is actively helping people in improving their quality of life. Simply by improving relationship aspect in every area of their life. Naman Jain, welcome.
Thank you for having me here, Krishiv. It's a pleasure.
There's a dynamic interaction between two or more people, such as friendship, romance, the parent-child relationship, relationships with colleagues at work, with the senior managers, uh, with the staff. It is a very important role to play on an individual to individual basis. People with good interpersonal relationships do well in life. And the other day, in continuation to our conversation, this in long term leads to not just sustainability but also success.
Yep.
Uh, could you share your experience with interpersonal relationships and the long term success and sustainability towards living a really good quality of life?
Yeah. So my very first interaction with interpersonal relationships happened right when I was born. The moment I was born, my eyes were just looking around and seeing the world and making sense of the entire world, and how people communicate and how people have an interaction, especially in terms of me as a little baby and growing up as a child. I was, constantly. What happens is when you are a kid, the mind is in a very strong receiving mode, and uh, it is like the mind is at its most potent in terms of gathering information and building oneself out of those information and learning, making sense of things. So it starts very early on, and it's only likely that whatever environment we are in during our childhood, whatever we see, whatever we experience, that plays a very important role in terms of how we see ourselves in our adulthood, how we uh, you know express ourselves as individuals in the world. So that is where it all starts.
Right. And to what degree uh, can a relationship really affect other areas of your life, such as fitness, uh, personal growth, your own mental health?
Okay, Krishiv. So I'll tell you about it. So what happens is I'll start with an example. Let's say you had a tough day at work and really like gave you a what to say hair dryer treatment. And what happens is you go back home and then in the heat of the moment you have an argument with your spouse. And then, at night you are sleeping with a very groggy mind and you sort of start questioning everything about yourself, about your life. And you start saying, yeah, man, I've got a really terrible life. And, sleeping with these kind of thoughts in mind, it over a long period of time leads to a lot of diseases in the body. And also the overall experience of life, the overall life is pretty disturbed with these kind of episodes. And vice versa, let's say if you have a fight with your spouse and then you go to work with that kind of feeling, then there it would be likely that your productivity at work would be very affected because of it. Also, another thing that I would like to share with you is having grudges over a long period of time, it leads to cancer. And that is why we use a number of forgiveness techniques. That is like the basic premise of any relationship issue when we are dealing with in terms of healing. Because once those hard feelings, those weeds that we grow against some other person, when we take it out, that is when we can think about something like growth in life or improving the quality of life.
Right. What do you think? What are the basics to maintain long-term sustainable relations, and what are the challenges that people face while just focusing on these basics?
Okay, so the very basic premise of having a very healthy relationship is taking 100% responsibility for everything. Everything, as in each and everything, even if there is something you feel that, no, I have not done anything wrong here, and I shouldn't apologize or I shouldn't feel bad about it or anything. The point is not about feeling bad. The point is, once you decide that, everything is 100% my responsibility, then you stop looking at people with the eyes of a certain judgment. Because what happens is, why we have a certain sort of, why we have good and bad relationships with different individuals. It's based on the kind of image that we create about those people in our life. Let's say if we have an image that, you know, it is my spouse who always starts the fight, then what happens is, you are sort of hyper alert and you go to your spouse with the feeling, what if they are going to shout at me or they are going to scream or, we'll get into another fight. So, and ultimately what happens is when we go with that mindset, that is what ultimately happens. And we end up having a fight. And, that is LOA 101. It's working all the time, the law of attraction. So that is the very basic premise. I know it's very difficult for certain people to accept that fact. But the thing is, the forgiveness that we do for other people, forgiveness in itself is a process that we do for ourselves. It actually has nothing to do with the other person. Because once we forgive, then we, free ourselves of that burden of getting attached to someone or something. And there is a certain, we don't have any expectations. We go towards any conversation or any individual without any expectations of what they might say or how the conversation will go. So this really helps in terms of keeping good relationships.
Yes, I think what you're trying to say is that a lot of times assumptions can lead to misunderstandings. Uh, the basically um, keeping too many assumptions is also not very healthy. It actually, as you rightly said, that assumptions begin to attract what is not the reality. So even though a fight may not take place, but just by my assumption thoughts, those are the kind of emotions that I generate within me. And then these two combined create a perfect recipe for a conflict.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit on that, what happens is once you have in a mind that my spouse is an angry woman or a angry man, and what happens is we go in that conversation, and the moment they say something, we get into a mode of reaction. And what that happens is immediately there is sort of a tussle, even though it was not wanted, it wasn't warranted. But what happens is we react on the basis of a certain image that we have of that person and not on what they are saying.
Yes, and I think uh, uh, that a lot of times we are reacting, not responding moment to moment. Uh, what would you say is the one major difference between reacting versus responding?
Okay, yeah. As I gave you the example, let's take the same example of a husband and wife relationship. So as I said, at this moment, what happened is, let's say it's the husband, and the husband just, decided that yeah, she is going to start a fight. So might as well I start the fight myself. And so that is a way of reacting to a certain image of a person. But let's say we need to sort of have a response to them, or what we say, a proactive response. So a proactive response would be, just to slow down and calm yourself down before getting into any conversation. And also, even though we have a certain past experience with a certain person, let's say in this case with our wife, that she starts a fight very often. What I have to say in my mind is, I have the most loveliest wife in the world, and she always has very good conversations with me. So once you have start having that mental dialogue, you go to that conversation with a lot of love and sort of a feeling of ease. And then when you go with that feeling of ease, the other person also senses that vibration. And based on these vibrations, the person also calms themselves down. And even if they have to, state a certain disagreement, then they would do it with a lot of calm. And thus, we can have a lot more healthy conversations. Imagine both the husband and wife have this image in their mind that my husband is a really nice person to conversate with, or my wife is a really good person to conversate with. Then it brings forward some very healthy conversations among such relationships. And it's the same for any kind of relationships, whether be it parent-child relationship, or even when we go and work with our colleague at the office. It's more or less the same.
To add on to what you've been saying is one thing I notice is that a lot of times it's the ego that kicks in, and it uh, makes people take the wrong decisions because they're operating out of the ego. And sometimes uh, that can be one reason for silly fights or silly conflicts, whether it's at home, whether it's at workplace.
Well, Krishiv, I would just slightly digress from what you said. I do agree with your point, and it's true to a lot of extent. But at the same time, we as human beings to have better relationships, we must understand that, when a certain person comes from a mindset of grogginess or is sort of really irritated and is, not very like friendly in talking, that might be somebody who's deeply hurt from within, and maybe throughout their life that is how their story has been. They've seen people, maybe they've seen their parents have very ugly fights, or maybe the parents had a divorce or something. So it also sort of goes deep into our adulthood as well, because we keep those patterns that we see and observe, because till 7 years of age the mind is constantly, it's the mind is like a magnet. It's constantly attracting information and keeping it, and based on that information it's creating the future reality of that particular person. So like being this, what this does is it gives us a certain understanding of why certain people behave the way they behave, and also at the same time it tells us that even though whatever our childhood reality was, we don't, it's not necessarily true that even in our adulthood the same patterns that I saw in my childhood are going to repeat themselves. So as an adult we can make ourselves understand that our childhood experiences are in the past and they don't necessarily dictate the way we carry forward in life in our adulthood.
Yes, I think the first 7, 8 years they really form a foundation. Those are the foundational years. But having said that, we can always uh, work through things and create a completely new reality, a completely new mindset to a large extent. And yeah, that's the way forward.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as an adult we always have a choice. We can either choose to be reactive or proactive, and based on that, so would be our relationships.
Yes. So let us conclude this session with a thought that
Okay.
yes, it is possible to maintain healthy relations in all aspects, and one of the key things is to just be mindful that an individual does not react but rather responds to the situations, and try to work on dealing with any assumptions that may not have a direct relation with the reality.
And the thing is, Krishan, we can always bend reality as well based on the kind of thoughts that we have in our mind. If we have a certain positive thought about the people, then that would be our reality, and we would attract people who would resonate with us and have good conversations with us. And yeah, it really depends on what we think and how we would like what we choose our thoughts to be. So yeah,
Yes.
that's
And
what
this
I like to.
only a human can do. Animals and plants, they are wired in a specific way, but the special quality of human beings is uh, we can change, we can modify continuously every now and then. Thank you so much, Naman. It was really a learning experience. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Krishiv. It was amazing speaking to you, and I hope our audience can get certain insight into how they can have better relationships. Thank you so much.
Absolutely. Thank you.